Apollo 12 was different. NASA wanted precision. And on November 19, 1969, Pete Conrad and Alan Bean descended toward the lunar surface inside the lunar module, Intrepid. Below them was a landscape covered in craters, rocks, dust, and enormous shadows. The landing had to be accurate. And it was. Apollo 12 touched down only about 160 meters from its intended target. Welcome to Xfinity Evolution, where history comes alive, and legends are reborn. November 14, 1969. The world was watching as a massive Saturn V rocket stood on the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, carrying 3 astronauts toward a destination humanity had reached only once before, the Moon. Their names were Charles, Pete, Conrad, Alan Bean, and Richard Gordon. But Apollo 12 was not simply another moon mission. NASA had a new goal. This time, they wanted to prove that humans could land on the lunar surface with incredible precision, explore a specific location, and bring back scientific evidence that could tell scientists more about the moon. Then, just seconds after liftoff, everything went wrong. As the Saturn V climbed through the clouds, lightning struck the spacecraft. For a moment, the astronauts and mission control had no idea how serious the situation was. Instruments began malfunctioning. Telemetry from the spacecraft was disrupted. Warning lights appeared inside the command module. And then, another lightning strike hit. Apollo 12 had been struck twice. On Earth, controllers desperately searched for a way to understand what was happening. If they could not restore the spacecraft's electrical systems and telemetry, the mission could be over before it had even truly begun. Then flight controller John Aaron remembered a little-known procedure involving the spacecraft's signal conditioning equipment. He told the crew to switch the system to its auxiliary setting. The command sounded strange, but it worked. Telemetry began returning, and Apollo 12 continued its journey into space. The mission had survived its first major crisis. But the real challenge was still ahead. After leaving Earth, the astronauts traveled through deep space toward the Moon. Their target was the Ocean of Storms, a vast lunar plain where NASA wanted to make a highly precise landing. For Apollo 11, simply reaching the Moon and landing safely had been the historic achievement. Apollo 12 was different. NASA wanted precision. And on November 19, 1969, Pete Conrad and Alan Bean descended toward the lunar surface inside the lunar module, Intrepid. Below them was a landscape covered in craters, rocks, dust, and enormous shadows. The landing had to be accurate. And it was. Apollo 12 touched down only about 160 meters from its intended target. The precision was extraordinary. Pete Conrad climbed down the ladder and became the third human being to walk on another world. His first moments on the Moon were filled with excitement and humor. But behind the famous photographs and television broadcasts was something much more important. Apollo 12 was turning the Moon into a scientific field laboratory. Conrad and Bean began their exploration. They collected rocks and soil samples. They photographed the lunar surface. They deployed scientific instruments. And they traveled across the Moon's surface looking for clues about its geological history. But there was another extraordinary target nearby. 3 years earlier, NASA had sent a robotic spacecraft called Surveyor 3 to the Moon. Surveyor 3 had landed in the same general region. Now Apollo 12 astronauts had the rare opportunity to visit a spacecraft that humanity had sent to another world years earlier. They photographed it. They examined it. And they carefully removed components from the spacecraft to bring back to Earth. Scientists could now study how materials and equipment had survived years of exposure to the harsh lunar environment. Apollo 12 astronauts spent hours working on the surface. Their mission was no longer simply about planting flags or proving that humans could reach the Moon. It was about exploration. It was about science. And it was about learning how future astronauts could operate on another world. But eventually, their time on the Moon came to an end. Conrad and Bean climbed back into Intrepid and launched from the lunar surface. They reunited with Richard Gordon, who had been orbiting the Moon aboard the command module Yankee Clipper. The 3 astronauts began the journey home. On November 24, 1969, Apollo 12 returned safely to Earth. The mission had lasted more than 10 days. It had survived lightning strikes, traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers through space, landed with extraordinary precision, explored the lunar surface, collected samples, and returned scientific equipment from another world. Apollo 12 had accomplished something that would become increasingly important for NASA. It showed that lunar exploration could be precise, repeatable, and scientific. The moon was no longer simply a distant object in the night sky. It had become a place humans could visit, explore, investigate, and return from. And perhaps that is what makes Apollo 12 so remarkable. Apollo 11 proved that humanity could reach the moon. Apollo 12 showed that we could learn how to explore it. But the mission also left behind a powerful lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous moments happen before the real journey even begins. For Apollo 12, 2 lightning strikes nearly ended the mission within minutes of launch. Instead, the astronauts continued. And because they did, another chapter of human exploration was written on the surface of the moon. Apollo 12 was not the mission that made the biggest headlines. It was not the first moon landing. But it may have been one of the missions that proved what lunar exploration could truly become. A journey of precision. A journey of science. And a journey toward a future in which humanity would no longer look at the moon simply as a destination, but as the beginning of something much bigger. If you want to understand how history is unfolding before our eyes, don't miss what comes next. Revisit Xfinity Evolution for deeper insights and powerful stories. Stay informed, stay curious, and join us again on Xfinity Evolution, where the world's biggest events come into focus.